Welcome back to Paul's Tech News, as I slowly digest the tech news each week. A process that has been leading to far more indigestion and acid reflux than usual this year. A thought often occurs to me: what if the tech news just stopped? What if all the major CPU and GPU and PC hardware manufacturers, seemingly in coordination, suddenly stopped launching products, announcing announcements, or generally catering to consumer hardware needs at all? And I almost thought the answer was going to be, just look around, because that time seems to be upon us. There is little to no news this week to digest. So I guess I'll work on this beer. Cheers. But then I cobbled together today's headline story, if you will, and thanks to the power of subtle misdirection, which I know you all appreciate when it comes to YouTube titles and thumbnails, I can bring you the latest, most up-to-date news on Nvidia's fabled RTX 50 Super Series, the elusive and mysterious Steam frame, and AMD's legendary Radeon RX 10000 video card lineup. I just can't tell you how exciting it was to hear about. And backed by popular demand, we have more good news tech briefs to add a bit of proper ballast for the show. They say no news is good news, so let's proceed with what might possibly be the greatest ever tech news.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the Geekom IT13 Max Mini PC, packing an Intel Ultra 9 185H processor, 24GB of ultra-fast LPDDR5 5600 memory, and a 500GB SSD into a tiny 0.9-liter chassis. Priced below $800 and delivering flagship-class performance, the IT13 Max features 15 I/O ports as well as Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 5.4, supports up to 4 4K displays, and is built to last with an all-metal internal frame that Geekom durability tested by driving over it with a car. Not recommended, but good to know it survived. The IT13 Max stays whisper quiet thanks to the Ice Blast 3.0 cooling system and comes with a 3-year warranty and 24/7 customer support. So if you're looking for an extremely small, power-efficient, and cost-effective PC to use as a laptop replacement, home server or home lab, local AI box, NAS, router, or HTPC, click the Geekom IT13 Max sponsor link in the video description and use the exclusive coupon code to save 8%.
The highly anticipated launches of next-gen computer hardware set to revolutionize the beleaguered PC gaming space, including Nvidia's RTX 50 Super Series GPUs, the Steam Frame VR headset, and AMD's Radeon RX 10000 video card lineup, continued to not happen this week, extending a record-breaking streak of things not happening, while further deteriorating the hopes and general goodwill of the PC gaming community. Reactions to the lack of substantial development have been varied, but seem to roughly align with the unlaunched product in question. Those anticipating the RTX 50 Super launch, for example, most recently said to be delayed by high 3GB GDDR7 memory chip prices, seem to have generally given up hope and are now resigned to waiting, perhaps indefinitely, for whatever doom Nvidia pronounces for their GeForce program. This is to be expected, as being a fan of Nvidia gaming GPUs in the past decade or so has trained even the most stalwartly enthusiastic PC gamer to anticipate only torment and exploitation from Nvidia, a conditioned response they have cultivated through a series of abusive training exercises designed to grind down each fan's ego and self-will until only a hollow husk remains. Steam Frame fans, on the other hand, seem to still have the ability to cling hopefully to empty, non-specific statements like, "We do feel confident that a launch date for the frame is just around the corner." This is per the developer of Gunman Contracts, a game that is set to launch alongside the frame. VR is a newer technology, so VR aficionados naturally have a perspective that's a bit more young and optimistic, as their naivety has not yet been crushed by decades of disappointment. And then there's the Radeon fans. Team Red, a bit more of a mixed bag. As the wait for the RX 10000 series drags on, they seem to be comfortable with just about any launch window as long as they can buy a GPU that's about 10% less powerful than the Nvidia alternative for 10% less money. Q2 or Q3 2027? Sounds good. Early 2028, hey, that'll give me more time to save up for a higher tier card. Radeon fans are generally harmless, but should be approached with caution due to their volatile nature. And if you want my take on it, why would any of these companies, with the possible exception of Valve, rush to launch new GPUs when there's the much easier alternative of just charging progressively more for the cards that are already out? Brilliant plan. And it's working. RTX 50 series GPU median prices are up 41% just from June to August. Speaking of a brilliant plan, oh wait, I gotta remember to drink my beer now or Joe's gonna get on my ass. Speaking of a brilliant plan, after so many of you mentioned in last week's comments that you liked the Good News Tech Brief segment I did, I've decided to bring it back because they barely even smell. They're good for another go-round. Please note that in order to have good news in 2026, it needs to be relatively good news, so forgive my reach if some of these require the assistance of a shoehorn. But hey, more memory in the world would be a good thing, and per a seemingly offhand comment by Intel CEO Lip-Bu Tan, Team Blue might be considering getting back into memory chip fabrication, which they have done in the past, back in the 70s, and with their underappreciated Optane products. As poorly transcribed by WCCF Tech, Mr. Tan was caught speculating about getting back into DRAM on a recent Tech Surge Deep Tech VC podcast, saying, "I used to be, don't invest in memory because it's kind of commodity business, right? But now become different, there's a lot of new technology come out, so we are kind of looking at." And I hope they continue to kind of looking at. They've already hired the ex-CEO of SK Hynix recently as an EVP, so now we can all pin our hopes on Intel saving us all from the RAM shortage, just like they did for GPUs with ARC. Speaking of the RAM shortage, it's old, if not continually irksome news to most of us, but there are plenty of earthbound humans who are blissfully unaware that AI bros bought up all the memory capacity, though more are finding out this week via Google's Pixel 11 announcements. Joe, there's two videos linked here. The one that's a little bit more critical is the Mr. Who's the Boss one. Look at those smooth graphics he's got, Joe. Nice smooth graphics.
In terms of having multiple editors, are they working on one video?
Two teams. There's an editing team A who focuses on efficiency, getting videos out quickly, and an editing team B focuses on our things that aren't time sensitive.
The new smartphone debuted Wednesday alongside the Pixel Watch 5 and the Pixel Tag stocking device, but most reviews I saw noted the same thing. More money for less hardware, since all models from the base to the Pro are $100 more than last gen, and rather than memory configurations starting at 16 gigs, the RAM now goes up to 16 gigs, with less expensive options getting 12 gigs. And they removed the temperature sensor and replaced it with the highlight notification LED, which primarily works with Gemini AI. So that seems like a downgrade too. I consider this good news because since the AI RAM apocalypse has arrived for phones now too, public awareness will spread, and perhaps that will move the dial in the right direction. Either way, when it comes to AI sucking up RAM, Google has now been on both the giving and receiving end. Kinda like your mom. Speaking of things not fitting in right, that's a familiar experience for Noctua, and they've got the calipers to prove it. Specifically, Noctua's larger CPU air coolers can have height clearance issues with some cases, so Noctua took it upon themselves to do their own bit of validation to check if cooler clearances listed by case manufacturers are accurate. And after measuring more than 100 cases, they found that over half, 56, saw a relevant deviation from the manufacturer's specifications, or if I may translate Austrian engineer speak, were wrong. Thankfully, most were underestimations, meaning you actually get a bit more cooler clearance than stated for free, but a handful, like the Asus Prime AP201, overestimate their clearance, which is not good. Noctua has updated their compatibility database with the info though, which is appreciated, and as a reminder, even if you just need a couple millimeters more clearance, you should never cut the tips of the heat pipes off your cooler. Speaking of good advice, whenever I cover SSD deals, the cheapest options rarely have a DRAM cache, and there's a handful of people who really seem to think that's a necessity, alongside SSD manufacturers who continue to pitch PCIe Gen 4 and Gen 5 drives with crazy high read and write speeds as well as crazy high prices per gigabytes. And though it's been proven before, Tom's Hardware published a set of tests late last week that proves, yet again, that once you've got a decent NVMe SSD, further storage upgrades do next to nothing for gaming performance, though there are, of course, other tasks that do benefit from a faster drive. Upgrading from SATA can help out your 1% lows much of the time, but it's good to know that if your focus is gaming, you can opt for a budget NVMe SSD without sacrificing FPS. Next, we briefly discuss Samsung's HBM4 memory yields, which I typically would not bother with as HBM4 is used for servers and paired with AI data center GPUs, but when you're scouring about for good news, as mentioned, sometimes you need the shoehorn. Simply put, Samsung's HBM4 development is going well, and they have surpassed 80% yields per wafer. Apparently that's the golden yield amount, with these chips already being implemented on AMD's Instinct MI400 platforms. This provides more competition for SK Hynix and Micron, and generally means there will be more high bandwidth memory on the market, which, who knows, might ease demand in the long run. Okay, I'll put away the shoehorn now. Falling under the feel-good category is this report about Nvidia's next-gen Rubin Ultra accelerators, which are apparently feeling the squeeze of the memory shortage that Nvidia is largely responsible for. So, if you'll join me for some schadenfreude, we can point and laugh as Nvidia is hoisted by their own petard. Poor Rubin Ultra solutions will now have to use lowly HBM4 instead of HBM4E. Oh, hey, maybe they can get some from Samsung. And rather than the 1 terabyte of memory they were showing off at GTC, Nvidia is now testing out 192 gigabyte and 256 gigabyte configurations, which by my calculations is much less. Nvidia's self-inflicted memory woes also extend to their Blackwell-based RTX Pro 6000 GPUs, if we can keep the schadenfreude up for just a bit longer, although it's unlikely they're complaining too much. But these GPUs are now going for $16,000 each, which is an 80% rise over their $8,500-ish MSRP, and somehow makes the inflated RTX 5090 prices seem quaint by comparison. One must assume that the cost of the 96 gigabytes of GDDR7 it comes equipped with is at least partially behind the price increase, but who knows? It could just be Nvidia saying, watch how much we can make AI bros pay for these things. So perhaps we can't thumb our noses at Nvidia on this one, but we can at least cast aspersions upon the AI bros. And to finish with perhaps the best news today, because practicality earns a lot of points around here, we have new B450 AM4 motherboards from GIGABYTE. I know, the socket is more than a decade old now and the chipset debuted in 2018, but for budget builders, the AM4 plus DDR4 option has been a solid choice lately, all things considered, and these two boards, the B450M D3HP and B450M D3HP Wi-Fi 6E, have some nice quality of life improvements. Like a BIOS flashback tool that was still a luxury back in 2018, a front panel USB-C header, albeit a 5 gigabits per second one, and 3 ARGB headers, so you can add RGB instead of upgrading things that actually make your PC faster. Just note that on this platform and chipset you'll top out at PCI Express 3.0 speeds. Dual M.2 slots as well make these very well-rounded boards, and while pricing is still unknown, similarly outfitted motherboards usually go for about $70 to $90. So if you're on the lookout for a budget AM4 motherboard with some updated features, hopefully GIGABYTE prices this one aggressively. Or these two aggressively. Oh, and one last bit of good news, follow-up reminder that Kyle and I will be hosting the Awesome Hardware Charity Livestream Summer 2026 edition next weekend on Saturday, August 22nd. You know, we'll be gaming and hanging out and raising money for Children's Miracle Network hospitals via Extra Life, and I just might have a massively epic PC build giveaway that I'm working on with Asus ROG 20th anniversary hardware. Look, the LED screen just pops right off. Anyway, it's going to be really cool, so mark your calendars for Saturday, August 22nd, and stop by the stream. It'll be lots of fun. But there you have it, guys, tech news for the week, and if you liked it, click that like button or leave me a comment down below. While you're down there, all of the articles I talked about today are linked in the video's description if you're interested, and you can check out my store at paulshardware.net for high-quality merchandise. T-shirts, hoodies, beer sets, and more, including the new Tri-Blend collection, multiple colors with the classic thumbscrew logo. I should not forget to finish my beer. Cheers! Subscribing to my channel is always good call too. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next week.